Folks, welcome inside the Parisi Palace, high above 3773 East Broadway. This is the Jake Feinberg Show, coming on Power Talk. Thank you so much for making us part of your day today, and what an honor it is to bring in a cat who clearly has sang for his supper in a variety of different mediums musically, on the bandstand, in the studio. Proficiency, technique, and facility, but I think what he understood from a very young age is that the music, when the music plays you, and you can enter the spirit mind, that's when magic can occur on the bandstand. And you can get to that point in a lot of different ways, but ultimately, if you take care of the music will take care of you. And over this pandemic, one thing I've learned at 43 years old is just the idea that there are no guarantees. We are not guaranteed tomorrow. And to really seize the day, treasure every moment, continue to be creative, and cut through the morass of what everybody else is trying to do in your field, and be unique, be singular, and stay out of your own way. Vinnie, Colaiuta, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Hey, Jake. Thank you for having me, man.
It's an honor, man. I just want to be clear, that tune coming in, Go Down Believin', that was you on drums. Is that right?
As far as I know, yeah.
Now, I just want to be clear, like, that to me is something that... can you just talk for a minute about how you originally connected with Al Kooper? Because Coop was very much on the scene, just take it away. How did you connect with him?
Well, what happened was that was from this record, which was the first record that I ever played on, called the Christopher Morris Band. And so at that time, it was a band from Massachusetts, from Cape Cod, actually. And so somehow, I don't know how, but he caught wind of their music, and then wanted to produce a record with that band, which he did. And we signed, to a major label, and then we basically went to actually we went to the record plant in Mill Valley for quite a while to make this record, and then we did some tracks at the record plant in LA, and then Al decided that he wanted us to be his rhythm section to go on this 6-week tour, which we did. We augmented it with some people from Boston that were pretty heavy in the jazz scene there, like Stanton Davis playing trumpet, who had a great jazz fusion group called Ghetto Mysticism.
Whoa.
And
Whoa.
yeah.
Whoa.
Oh, it was great.
Oh,
yeah.
Man.
Stanton Davis and Ghetto Mysticism, and he was playing trumpet. Gary Valenti was playing trombone, who went on to make a splash in the avant-garde jazz scene. And the late great Dave Wilczewski was playing tenor saxophone, who left us several years ago. Really, really tragically of a brain tumor. And he was just one of those amazing people. It was one of the most beautiful spirits you would ever know, and just a fantastic musician. Very, very humble guy. And the last I saw him playing at Disney Hall with Brian Wilson, and he was doing that.
Wow.
And
wow.
yeah, it was really amazing. So Al wanted us to do that, and we ended up going on the road with Al Cooper. I mean, there were more people involved there, but it was a sort of an augmented version of that band, and we went out for 6 weeks and did a U.S. tour. We had a bus, and I remember we played at places that, we were staying in nice hotels, and I have fond memories of us playing at this place called the Armadillo in Texas, and we played at the there was a club in Nashville, the Exit Inn. Wow. And I remember we were playing various venues of varying sizes, and we actually at one point there was a band that opened up for us that went on to do some great things. They were called Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. And so
I love it.
So that was it was pretty amazing, wow. Right? So and then I was sort of like at that time, that was before I moved to LA. I came out here, and at that time, what I saw was pretty remarkable, because I remember sort of like just driving down Sunset Strip and seeing billboards for things like Stanley Clark's School Days record or Weather Report, and that's the kind of things that were on billboards.
So hip.
On Sunset Strip.
I love this.
Yeah. At that time. So I'm seeing all this, right, and I'm thinking, oh, you've got to be kidding me. This is the promised land. This is the promised land. It was like, right, exactly. 40 years in the desert, right? And it's like a mirage. And so I thought, oh, I need this. This is everything I wanted and everything that I've, wanted to become as a musician, and all the things that I love that I want to be involved in and be doing. And so I moved out, and, that was still alive, but it gradually, experienced a denouement into, probably, gradually over the years, what I think our friend Rick Beato refers to as low information music.
Yeah, honestly, you're nailing it as usual. You lived it. My question about that tune, "Go Down Believin'." I mean, there was a doo-wop. Yeah. You have a credit on there. I mean, you wrote that part of that song with Chris and I think his wife. Is that true?
Yeah, that's his wife, and I probably did. I don't remember what part I was responsible for, but
I mean, it's a groove. I was listening to it all night, man. I was like, "This is the."
Oh, cool. Well, that's interesting because when you first put that song on, it took me a minute. It's been so long since I've heard it that I thought for a second I thought it was the intro to a Pointer Sisters song that I recognized.
Really?
And then I went, wait a minute. Oh no, that's me. I know that. So we were really influenced by a lot of the kind of the stuff we were all kind of into. We were really, really into the meters.
There's a couple tracks on there that are so like in the pocket, meters, mid-70s. That groove is so there.
Yeah, we were really into all of that stuff. I mean, I definitely was, and they kind of hit me to the meters, and so Chris and his wife Jana, they were really into the meters. George Porter was her favorite bass player,
Oh my God!
And
dear man.
Yeah, and those guys. Yeah,
dude,
all of them. So right. And so we were really into all of that, and just all of that kind of sensibility from that time period. And the interesting thing about it is that I hear it now, and I feel very fortunate to have sort of just been just a part of. I'm sorry, a text just came up that distracted me.
That's fine, yeah.
That was kind of funny, so, but I'm not going to repeat it.
That's fine, dude. Go ahead, just continue on, yeah.
So it's like those things. They're timeless to me. They're still timeless, and that speaks a lot. And I'm not talking about that record or me playing. I'm talking about the things that were from that time period. And it speaks loudly for that stuff. Where I just think to myself, I listen to that stuff now, and it still sounds fresh. And it's interesting that there's been a whole contingency generationally of people who have come up that have sort of revitalized stuff from that time period and revitalized stuff from the 80s as well. The things that I was a part of as well. And sort of, there's a whole generation of people hearing it like it's fresh for the first time, but they have no idea that it's modeled after stuff that was going on 30 and 40 years ago, So it just speaks loudly of all of that. And, and that's part of the reason why I tell people, oftentimes I'll say, quite frankly, I'm sort of stuck in a time loop between,
me too.
1963 and 1978, roughly.
Dude, that's basic. No, I go 61. 61 is
okay.
Yeah, 61 is Bill Evans at the Vanguard. That's where I start. But yeah, go ahead.
Okay, go. I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
No, but you know what I wanted to ask you, Vinnie? This is what I wanted to say is that when you, because you were at Berkeley, and obviously, like it was a gig. Like Cooper was like, "Yo, you want to come to Sausalito or the record plant?" But did you have, there was Pooh's Pub, and there was all these crazy places to play, the Combat Zone. I know cats that made livings there, and did you? I mean, Christopher Morris. That would not be mistaken for School Days, Stanley Clarke, or Freddie Hubbard, that kind of stuff. Like, did you?
Yeah.
Were you just kind of interested in just seeing what was out there, or I mean, how did you? What kind of band were you cooking in? Did you have any preconceived notion about how you wanted your career to unfold when you left Berkeley?
Well, yeah, I did. I kind of I was influenced by all this stuff, from jazz fusion to studio. I noticed that a lot of these guys who could really play ended up on CTI records. You see guys like Gadd and Billy Cobham that were on those records, and on I can go on and on and on, and then all the fusion stuff that was happening, and it was sort of like studio musicians were part of some of the seminal stuff that were happening. At that time, I remember Harvey Mason is on Chameleon, so he was the Headhunters was this was a seminal record, the Herbie Hancock.
Absolutely.
Headhunters. And Harvey was doing sessions. So it's he played on Breeze and George Benson. He played on Strawberry Letter 23, the Brothers Johnson. He was Harvey was doing dates. But then he also was he had his own record deal. He was doing records. But yeah, I wanted to kind of I came this close to moving to New York. And at the last second, I went to L.A. I was calling up people, and I was in touch with my schoolmates who some went to New York and some went to L.A. And, at one point, I was going to do the Saturday Night Live gig because Howard Shore, who was the musical director at that time, called me up and said, "Hey, I think the drummer is going to leave in a couple of weeks. If you come to New York, you can bam, because I was subbing on that show because they liked me because after I was on that show with Zappa, right? And so then I went to New York and I crashed out at this friend of mine's house that was a well-known Indian violinist called El Shankar, right?
Oh my God! Are you kidding me? Oh my God! Was he?
Yeah.
How did you know him? Was he at Berkeley? How did you know him?
No, I knew him because he came and played with us and did an East Coast run
Oh my God.
with Zappa's band when I was in Zappa's band. So I got to know him from that.
Dig.
And so I got to know him, and then I crashed at his house for a couple of weeks, and it's like, okay, well, I got to go on the road now. So I had to go back to Boston, and I called him up and I said, look, if the guy's still not leaving, then I can't. I got nowhere else to stay here, so I've got to go back to square one. And so I went back to Boston, and I remember talking to a friend of mine who was in LA. He said, "No, forget about that. Come out here. You'll dig it. It's nice. The weather's nice, and you can crash with me, and you'll find gigs and blah blah blah." So, and incidentally, this happened during the winter of 1978, which was the infamous 4-day blizzard that Boston was snowed in, and nobody could leave their house for 4 days. So we were all snowed in. We had to climb out of the second-story window to go to the co-op to get groceries, and the city gave us these vouchers that if you can make it out of your house and get there, we'll give you food. So me and one of my roommates did that. We somehow slid down this snowbank, and don't ask me how we got back up into the house, but we did, and we had groceries, and so we couldn't go anywhere for 4 days. I think I saw some police and snowmobiles, but that was the worst blizzard that Boston had. And so after that, I thought, okay, I've had enough of this. So I think I'm going to go to LA. So I took $80 that I had in my pocket and my drums in a suitcase, and I jumped on a Greyhound bus.
Wow.
And I went to LA.
Epic, dude.
So that's what I did. And the thing is, I just wanted to play. I wanted to do sessions. I wanted to, because those people, all the musicians that I liked and that I listened to, were all doing that and playing with various people, and the variety and the musicianship that it took and all that kind of stuff. I was like, yeah, and at the same time, Weather Report and all that stuff was out, Mahavishnu and Tower of Power and Headhunters and all this stuff was happening. It was just so much stuff. And then I got to LA, and like I said, it was the promised land, and I was just sort of when I got here, I was all about Miles and Mahavishnu. I just wanted to blow.
Right.
And they're kind of hang on a second, kid, tone it down a bit,
Yeah, dude, just stop smashing around. Yeah, I love this, dude.
Yeah, that's okay, but not for kind of what we do most of the time around here, And so at first I thought, oh, really? Okay,
right.
So it's going to be like that.
Right.
But then I realized that as I started getting into the scene, I realized that there was a reason why there was a particular language protocol, because when you made records, you weren't there to just sort of just do that. And even in clubs, it was sort of their whole thing of cutting loose was based on this base of sort of groove and a certain thing, which really is not necessarily prohibitive. So, in other words, I kind of took what I could get out of that, and as part of a learning and a maturation process on how to play music, and how to sort of document music, and then even if I was just going to have fun, to realize that there's a time and place to sort of, if I was just going to just kind of let us all hang out all the time, then the gig had to kind of be that.
I dig.
It had to be that, and so I sort of realized, what different contexts do, and so there's a kind of I think it kind of happens in layers, where you sort of learn as you mature, you start seeing what concept and context do. And to me, everything is about context and concept. But then at the highest levels of it, which that exists on the highest level. But the way you described what you described at the very beginning of the show,
Yeah.
where you talked about the spirit mind and all that's the crux of the matter. That basically is kind of where you want to arrive at. That's where you want to arrive. And when you arrive there, you realize that even that is a process, because it's not a destination so much as it is kind of like a state. And it's a fluid state. It's a fluid state that you could go in and out of if you inhibit it or if you just allow yourself to sort of be there. And so that to me is the highest state to be. And I try to operate from that state all the time. I try. And well, that's not even the right word.
Right.
In order to try, you gotta let go.
Yeah, right. You're trying to follow the muse. You're trying to follow the muse.
Yeah.
I mean, you're making.
Exactly.
All right. So we have a game on this program called Name That Voice. I want you to take a listen to this. Pay attention to the content, and we'll come back. Exactly. That's why I love talking to you, because you actually tasted what is a beautiful sanctuary. That's me. Just keep listening. Improvisation and then singing for your supper. That just does not exist anymore.
Yeah.
You know.
So you had to really sing for your supper. You know, the classical people would be like, "Oh, you can't teach this," and so we'd write it up so it looked like a classical program, fit their pedagogy, and we teach what we want. Because we're not dummies.
No.
So it's like, yeah, man, I'll dance for you, man. It's cool. But right now, you know, and I realized, but as soon as I left, and as soon as David left, and as soon as you leave these big places, they tilt back to the right. Right? And so as soon as they tilt back to the right, that's where they naturally want to be. So right now we can't battle these things. Some of us have to be willing to start new things.
Right.
And it seems like a drop in the bucket. You know, for me, it's been Creative Music Workshop here in Halifax, the middle of nowhere, on one level, and I can list off the names of the great musicians who've come here to teach because they want to teach this way.
Right. Exactly.
They can teach this way. Naropa Institute, you know, people would come and they'd go, "It's the same deal as last year." I'd say, "Yeah, I'll give you a paycheck. You sign it back to me." And they'd say, "Okay." We had no money. But they came because it was a freedom in teaching that they couldn't find anywhere else. I think that was true in the beginning of Berkeley. I remember talking to Gary. But now it's a factory. And it's an academy.
And it's an assembly line.
It turns out a product.
Yes.
And it's assembly line. And they say you're going to do this, but after the first year, half of those people are gone. There's some cream that rises to the top. There's some teachers that if you can spend time with David Tronzo, God bless you, man.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Or great teachers there who are still willing to teach. But as a system, it's a 400-year-old system. It's still going to the king and asking for permission. You know,
tilting back to the right. It's very.
Yeah.
It's. This is going to be a hard one, but you want to take a guess at who that is?
Man, oh man! Well, he talks about Naropa, and he talks about
I got you going
Halifax.
here. And we just lost him. He just passed. He just passed.
Oh, not Gary Peacock.
Very good guess. Played with Peacock. No, that was the great drummer Jerry Grinelli.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
I would have never guessed that.
No,
really?
Yes, and this
so
is.
Wait a minute. He's gone.
He died last week. Yeah.
Oh Lord, have mercy! I had no idea.
It's so Vinnie. This is why I do this. This is because you know what you were just talking about. This is the crux of it was this. He started the clip talking about him and David Friedman in Germany. And they would write a curriculum, and the classical professors would be like, no, you can't do that. So they'd make it so that it was more classicalized. But the point is that at Naropa in the 70s, they were doing all this mixed entertainment with Art Landy and Peacock and Abercrombie.
Uh-huh.
And I just wonder, when you talked about context and you used these two terms that you just before about how you approach music.
You're talking about context and concept.
Thank you.
From there.
And my question is,
Yeah.
what he was talking about at Berkeley now with this idea of it being an assembly line, do you think you would have had the open-mindedness, like you said, you adapted your you couldn't always play in that Mahavishnu Weather Report style. You figured out a time and a place to move the music along no matter what genre. And I wonder how much.
Well,
I just want to say, because, Harvey Mason, when he went to Berkeley, Alan Dawson sat with him and said, there's nothing really I can teach you, so let's just play games. And they played games on vibes and drums. Next thing you know, Alan Dawson's like, I'm not going to be in town. Take the gig with the Duke Ellington Big Band that's coming into town. That was a music education. And I just wonder about your music education, how much that lent itself, the freedom of it, not codifying a language, but freeing you up to be able to adapt on the fly so that you could sing for your supper when you moved out to L.A.
Well, it kind of did, but I got to tell you that.
Yeah, go wherever you go.
It's like, it's sort of like, what happened with me was that I had that awakening when I got here, like, hey, hang on a second, kid, we don't do that here. It was like, it was one of those things where, I learned, like all of that stuff, and that I was familiar with a lot of different stylistic, nuanced things before I even came here, because I was listening to a lot of that different stuff in Boston. And so, I was like on the job learning when I came here, all of that, learning how to play for songs, and really record properly and just get a good sound, and how to play this tune, and how to sort of, I don't know, a lot of things that were just, that contributed to my actual professional chops was like, I got thrown in the deep end, man.
Right.
The rest of it was like training and sort of like, all the things that I did were like, it was fun. I mean, most of us were playing top 40 gigs and what we called casuals or GB gigs, general business gigs in Boston, just to kind of pay the rent, so that we can go and play like jazz gigs that paid $2. You know what I mean? Like we weren't all
totally.
Not everybody was playing at Pooh's Pub and just like relying on that to pay their rent.
I dig.
Like, for example, I was in a top 40 band that we played like 5 nights a week. With Bill Frisell.
Wow.
Bill and I were in a top 40 gig playing the top 40 tune.
It's so great, man. Oh my God.
Yeah. And I used to do these casuals, like sort of like Middle Eastern weddings, with George Garzone. And we would be playing in like 7 and 9, and they loved it, They loved
I
all
love
that.
this stuff. This gypsy music, man.
As the night wore on, as the night wore on, the drunker they got, the more out we took it. So by the end of the night, we were just taking it out anyway.
Oh, my. Where are the tapes of these? I need to hear tapes of that stuff, man. That's
man,
unreal.
I know, right? George, like sometimes when I see George, we reminisce about it, and it's like, so all of that was like, and then, but the Christopher Morris Band was cutting that record, and so you could see that I had already sort of understood the sensibilities of all that before I even got to L.A., because that record was made before I sort of got thrown in the deep end in L.A. But in L.A. it was part of the on the job training was like really playing with a click, learning how to interpret a chart really fast, to document a tune in the 3-hour session, sometimes that had an arranger on it that, you had to get perfectly with, the horn section and the strings, everybody in the room at once, and just sort of like time is money. And so you develop those skills, that skill set that enables you to sort of make decisions quickly, creative, interpretive decisions, as on top of having the skill to sight read well, and then play with a click well, and you have a good sound, and you have good time, and have a good feel, and good technique, and good touch, and and so all of that stuff has to come together because this record is going to be there forever. And so it was actually treated, like a proving ground in a sense, like, you really got to have your stuff together to do this here. We're all doing this at once, and it has to sound just so. And at the same time, it was sort of like, it was a proving ground, I guess. But it was like, I think that it becomes, it's treated,
yeah,
a little bit like more of a rarefied atmosphere. You know what I'm saying? Instead of kind of like, well, even though it's opened up a lot of doors for so many people that can sort of, everybody has a workstation now and they can all sort of make, decent sounding things in their laptop if they want, a great sounding ones or crappy sounding ones, depending on, they got all the tools available to them. But it's sort of like it was more rarefied then, and there was just something a little more exclusive and special about that, and also the fact that you didn't have to wear it was enough to sort of meet all of those qualifications that I just categorized for you. I think one instrument, not like trying to do it on 5 instruments, and be an engineer, great engineer too. It's like we're not all going to be Al Schmidt, may he rest in peace.
Rest in peace.
And like I'm not going to be Wilton Felder and Steve Gadd and Al Schmidt all rolled into one. I'm just not, and that's okay.
Yeah. And
I don't think any of us have to. But having said that, there are people who are wearing a lot of hats, and generations are coming up doing that, and they're good at it. And I've been no stranger to technology and the advancements that have afforded those kind of capabilities either, and I'm I have a level of proficiency at that as well. I'm not so I know how to record myself and all of that, but there's a difference between doing that by yourself and then doing it with other people who are all great. And what happens, the synergy when they're all doing it together, everybody does what they do really well. You're working as a team, and even just forget about just the engineer part or the producer, but you've got a rhythm section, and like the amount of things that can potentially happen at any given moment are so vast with these minds working together that it can only happen in that way. Now, if you get really good at sort of, listen, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to be the only live element, and the rest of it's going to be programmed or whatever, that's okay too. It's just a different beast. So treat it differently, because to me, that's more like sculpting or painting. It's like I can play really good with a computer too, but you got to remember the computer doesn't talk back. So it's not going to give you this variable,
wow,
the variables that will happen with the interactions that you have in real time with other minds that can throw you curveballs at any second. And you've got to think on your feet. You know what I'm saying? It's almost like, you're flying in like in a war, and you're in a jungle and you're flying a warplane, and it's like, it's as if everything, your enemy is stationary, it's not moving.
Right.
You know what I mean? That doesn't happen in real life,
No.
You know what I'm saying?
It's
yeah.
the thing is, the thing this is really, Charlie Mariano, when he went to Schillinger House, which was Berkeley, first year,
yeah,
he'd come off the road to clean up from junk, or he'd learn a new instrument. It was a trade school for already professional musicians. And what I want you to extrapolate on is this idea of, can the language of jazz, okay, whatever that term means, we could walk down the street and ask 20 different people what that word means. We get 20 different answers. Can you really codify a street language in the academy? Because what I'm noticing today, Vinnie, is that, listen, you were sort of on the tail end of individual sound being vogue. And what I mean by that is, I can tell Mickey Roker from Pete LaRocca to Max Roach. I can Chain. I can tell they're all different. You, Larry
Yeah.
Klein, and it's all different. And then you had the efficiency. It happened in studio recording right around the time you went out to L.A., but you had the efficiency model. I remember Mike Clark, the drummer, telling me the producers would say, don't play yourself, just play straight beats. So you went to this
Yeah.
system of like, and in the academy, so that's my question. Can you codify a street language? It doesn't seem to be working because I'm hearing a homogenization of sound in today's improvisational music world.
Okay, well, okay. It doesn't seem to be working because you're hearing an homogenation of sound. I don't think it's because it's not possible to codify it. I think that the homogeneity might be resultant of something else. I think it is possible to an extent to codify it in that you can take a vocabulary that is inherently the jazz vocabulary or something that's like, arguably, for example, like various types of phrases and harmonic content and note choices and patterns that are sort of unmistakably of the bebop era, and you could identify them and codify them to an extent, and places like Berkeley have done that, but that's, it's kind of like that's only like a part of it that it's limited. It's like it's a descriptive language, and it's sort of like the version of written, human language. There's a limit. Like I remember Elvin Jones' story once where somebody said to him, there's an old fable that says, "Oh, well, man, where did you learn how to play that, Elvin?" And the purported answer was, "Well, I sure as hell didn't get it out of no book." So
Right.
The thing about it is that he's a perfect example of, okay, transcribe an Elvin Jones solo. Or, transcribe Rashid Ali. You can, at a certain point, the descriptive language starts breaking down.
That's beautiful.
And then you have to augment it to a point where, maybe they'll understand it, but no matter how much you try to, it's like playing charades. It's like you can try to explain it to someone, but if they don't understand, if they haven't heard it, no amount of explaining will be able to sort of relay that to them as much as immersion does.
Totally.
Like you have to just immerse yourself in that music. And the descriptive language is just like it's a limited part of it. But you know what? When I was coming up, all that individuality was championed, and it all kind of started changing over the years. But I saw that happening or accelerating much more recently, which is bizarre because it's kind of a paradox to me, because I'm seeing all of these people now where everybody can play and people have an immense amount of material, but it's like they all sound the same, and I can't, and it's,
So I just want to be clear. I just want to be clear. You have, this is beautiful because you haven't quite figured out why that is.
Yeah, you would think that, well, because you have all of the knowledge
Absolutely.
available instantly, and everyone is parroting the same knowledge. And so it's just kind of like what's spectacular for the moment and what's popular versus kind of trying to digest a bit of information and then assimilating it into something, into yourself, whereby when you emote using that information that's, probably coming out of you through a background process in your mind, that there's a reason that you're emoting using that vehicle, because it's sort of like you had to eat that food in order to get the stomach ache of what it felt like. It wasn't, you know what I mean?
Totally.
In order to spit it out, you had to, you couldn't just like, whereas, you know what I mean? It's like, and also it was just a matter of course, where it was like, well, if you model somebody, they're like, okay, well, that's cool, but who are you? who are you?
Right.
And there's something that's very valid about that. It's like, yeah, I mean, there's already this guy, there's already that guy. We got that. Who are you? So, guys, like you said, it's like all those guys, Mickey Roker, Max Roach, but you can go back to Big Stig Catlett, man.
Absolutely.
And not only could you go back to him for individuality's sake, but you can go back to him to hear how forward-thinking he was and how ahead he was in the game, where people today are still playing stuff that can't, like, there's this whole, kind of recent vocabulary in the past 10 years that's got real popular in this sort of jazz and crossover drumming with all this sort of, stick clicking and, like where you're kind of like doing these kind of various types of rim shots and cross stick things. And it's like, that, that came from Papa Joe, man.
Wow.
It wasn't just some recent guy who made it up. That came from Papa Joe Jones. So he was right when he said there's nothing new under the sun.
Well, I mean,
that's just got a different bow tie,
Just you're blowing my mind. I mean, the thing is, I mean, did you ever get Grinelli, again? Rest in peace. He's definitely looking over us. But he said at one point, or I asked him about this, and he said, at some point you have to stop the input, and that's very hard today with the smartphones. The amount, and I wonder, in your career, was there ever a point when you said, I need to stop listening to other people and start listening to myself? Did you ever?
Yes.
Can you talk about maybe the early? Because I think what you're talking about is you're talking about people with all this vocabulary, huge bag of tunes, maybe original tunes, but yet they all sound the same because there's too much input. They're still listening to what came before instead of really hearing what's in their head, what's coming out of them.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. If you are ensconced in, I don't want to get too tangential here, so if
go off, man. Go off. Yeah.
Just rein me back in.
I will, yeah.
Sometimes I might get off of the subject. But like if I knew what it was like, I don't know what it was like. It was before my time, but I can only imagine, and it just stands to reason that if you lived in New York, I want to be a jazz musician, it's 1950s. It's like, well, yeah, okay. You're going to be ensconced in that scene, and that's a microcosm of having all this input whereby, they're all hearing each other. Monk, Mingus, they're all hearing each other, and all this cross-pollination is going on, right? So they're getting all this information, Brubeck et al., right?
Right.
And so, there had to be this cross-pollination of information on top of their influences, meaning other influences that were maybe outside of that sphere of the immediate information that they were getting by going to nightclubs every night and being immersed in that scene. Like, for example, if they had, let's say if any one of them had, Debussy as an influence or I don't know, Varese,
right,
which is highly likely, but and that would come out in what you would hear as well. But so all that immersion is kind of the same thing on a smaller scale. Instead of having a smartphone, you go to clubs. But it's interesting to note that with all of that flying around, there was innovation taking place and still individuality. Hence, the befuddlement and the result of me being so flummoxed as why it's not the case.
No, you know what? I'm telling you because I do this show for promotion. For a lot of people, they say, boy, it's nice to reminisce. I don't want my parents were librarians. There's no preservation. I want to do this for my daughters and future generations. And I think you just told me the answer. And one reason is because if cats were going to see Monk and Mingus at the 5 spot and then going to Slugs and this, that, okay, they did not, the beautiful part of that was that they did not have the ability to hit a rewind button and listen to something over and over and over again. They heard it, and then it got into their imagination. It got into their imagination.
Bingo.
And so now you perseverate and are able to just go over the same thing over and over and get it to what we think is, we call it perfection, but actually it creates a lot of sterility. Whereas if you walked out of one of Slug's clubs, you'd be like, okay, I kind of remember the melody, but I'm going to kind of go off on my own. You didn't have the ability to go over and over. I think you just hit it, man. I think that to a degree.
That's the truth. Keep going.
No, this is what I wanted to ask, because I'm so glad it popped into my head. I need you to this. We can go as deep a dive in this as you want. Ego. Tell me what happened with Ego, Tony Williams. That apparently it changed your life.
Okay.
Because I mean, dude, that album.
Well, speaking of, I know.
Yeah.
Here's the thing.
Yeah.
Speaking of what you just said.
Yeah.
In terms of you couldn't go back and rewind. It's like, well, there were bootlegs and some people did do that, but at the same time, it wasn't the order of the day.
No.
Because nobody had smartphones. I remember I tried to go in once, and I had a little cassette recorder hidden under my jacket, and I thought I was going to be really cool, because I'm really, really against that kind of stuff, generally speaking. So, I thought, I'm going to take Tony Williams' Lifetime, and it was so loud, I left there, and I went in my car, and I was like, yippee, and I pressed play, and all I heard was, and I thought, okay, it taught me a lesson, so
Yeah, dude. It's just the best laid plans, but still, I mean, the idea was this: that like more often than not, people did not have. Either way, you could be listening to Top 40 on the radio, and in the 70s when you were at Berkeley, and there was no. You heard it once, and you couldn't go back. Now we can go back and back and back and back and go over, and it's just like. And I mean, listen, I'm guilty of it too, but I'm not a musician. I'm just saying, if you want to talk about the ability to find your own voice and beg, everyone's going to borrow from their idols, but at that time you didn't have that ability. You just had your own imagination to run away and walk away after you got your mind blown,
Yeah, exactly. And so tying Ego in with that, because I was trying to record Tony, but when I heard that, it was like there was a guy who, when I was, I don't know, maybe in 7th grade or something, we were doing the tri-state sort of jazz band, competition or whatever you want to call it. And so I showed up somewhere and I met one of the guys in the other band, and I remember he asked me, just as a point of casual conversation, so who's your favorite drummer? I said, Buddy Rich. And he goes, who? And I said, who's yours? He goes, Tony Williams. We're talking about people who are in junior high here, right? And
this is so insane.
I went, wow, okay, so I have to check that out.
Yeah.
I'm like 14 years old, right? And the next day I go to a record store, and it just happened to be on the wall in the record store.
Wow.
So I went, oh, yeah, there's that guy.
Wow.
And, I put it on my turntable. I went home, and I went, okay, it was like I heard Greek, right? And I didn't understand a word of it. I thought, I don't get it. I was kind of perplexed. It wasn't like I went like, ooh, this is garbage or this is bad. It wasn't like that. It was like I was kind of scratching my head, right? And I didn't understand it. And so, I started, okay, I took it off, and then all of a sudden the next day I come back. I want to hear that again. And I'm not kidding you. It was like somebody hit me over the head with a sledgehammer. And that was one of my big epiphanies. It's like, I got it. And that was like a point of a huge conceptual shift and opening, where, yeah.
I need you, I don't know, because I don't know what was that, like 71? Is that when you were in high school, basically? Like,
Ego?
Yeah, well, like that.
Oh, this would have been like, when this happened, that would have been, let's see, I graduated in 73 or 17. Yes, yeah. Like
because I
interviewed,
he had all the M-Boom percussionists on there. He had Larry Young on there, I think. I still, Vinnie, to this day, some of that, like, what was it conceptually? Was it just the idea of drums being able to be, you take the floor on this. What, that album today, I don't even know.
Like all of a sudden you're hearing people like Buddy who are really articulate, and
Right.
in terms of conceptually and the way he phrased things and the sort of context he was in. And then all of a sudden you put on Ego and you hear, the first thing you hear is some hip drum shit, right?
Right.
I mean,
Right.
now you're hearing that and you're hearing this kind of blowing over this sort of percussion ensemble playing this kind of Afro, you know what I mean? And just how he was playing over the bar and the sound and the concept of it. It was like, I just saw that there was a whole completely another vista that was, you know what I mean? Like,
Totally.
like I was in this beautiful house before, but I didn't know that there was another wing to the house, you know, that was,
Yes.
you know what I'm saying?
Newfound truths, man.
Was,
Oh, totally, man.
Yeah. It wasn't like one was suddenly bad, you know, it was, newfound truths. So 71, that album came out in 71.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Exactly.
That album still to this day is. I got another name that
you said him boom.
Well, I mean, dude, Max.
Max had him boom. So he did that. It's interesting, you know. And Max was one of Tony's, if not Tony's, favorite. So you could see that, you know. You could see the conceptually, it's kind of like. That was like an extension of him boom, you know?
It totally. Did you, the Omar Clay, Freddie Waits, Warren Smith, Ray Mantia, did you get to see, I mean, to me, that's the most, that's where the rubber meets the road for Jake Feinberg. The idea, again, Max had a huge discography going way back, obviously, to Bird and Clifford Brown and that stuff. But, I mean, did you get to see percussion ensembles like M Boom Live? I mean, to me, like, that is what is so lacking, putting the pandemic aside. I mean, I've talked to Bill Summers. He used to go to see Pablo Landrum in, like, the, you know, up in the Bronx playing, like, you know, Santeria, like spiritual descarga concerts. I mean, it was really, the drum is, my whole show is about rhythm. Rhythm is love. And it's just hard to really feel any love when people are, because of cost and because of just pop music, they're doing mechanized rhythm, or you have human beings playing machine parts. It doesn't feel good. Did you have an opportunity to see or even play in a percussion ensemble?
Well, yeah. I did, but only in an educational setting, like for yes and no.
Yes.
It wasn't that I played in a percussion ensemble, but when I was in junior high, I went to summer school every summer at West Virginia University because I was still living in Pennsylvania, and so they would give you college credit for it. But then I decided to go to Berkeley after 3 summers of doing that. And so the guy who was the principal teacher there was called Phil Faini, who then became the dean of the school. And he had taken a 2-year sabbatical and came back. And when I went there for the first time for the first fine arts music camp in the summer, he had all these African percussion instruments and sort of microtonal xylophones, and various kinds of drums that sort of kind of basically set the stage for me to embrace ego and all that stuff. And so he taught us. He had entire classes just on that, and so. And I was learning mallets and timpani and sort of continue that all the way through Berkeley. And then like halfway through my first semester at Berkeley, I was like, I can't do this. It's just too much on top of learning everything else. Yeah. And I got to devote time to like, what am I going to perform on and why do I want to do this? It will be the drum set. Okay, do that. So that's what I did. I was like, no, I'm not going to think I'm going to go and play in the pit orchestra. I don't want to. I'm going to be a timpanist, so I want to do, I want to play the drums. So what am I going to concentrate on? The drums. So, so that was as close as I've got. And I never got to see M Boom, and I never got to see Tony's band, a Lifetime, and I wish I did, but I was never. But I did see some, in a school setting, in various kinds of collegiate settings. I've witnessed some percussion ensembles and have done some sort of amateur stuff in the setting of pedagogy. But it's interesting. Wasn't Herbie Nichols the one that said that the future of jazz would be the drums? I think
that's, if he did, that's the hippest thing I've ever. Because that was my question. I've asked Ron Carter this, and I've asked a bunch of guys, and I want to ask you, how responsible? Because I think this is the part of this thing that I don't know, we call it a crisis, or in terms of modern melodic improvisation. Is, can you talk about, are rhythm sections responsible? Are they partially responsible for creating new musical vocabulary? I mean, you think about, anyway, you can take the floor on that. But if you really look at the extensions of, I remember our dear friend Larry Klein talking about the Plug Nickel sessions. Really, that was the first time, at least on, that, Cats would play standards, but then, Ron and Tony left the head of the tune. And then it could become any tune, and they went off, and then they would find their way back. But it seems to me that through the lineage of the music and the time periods that we love, Motion and LaFaro, Peacock, and it seems to me the rhythm sections are primarily responsible for increasing musical vocabulary, and I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
I think they are too. I think that they have exercised that and demonstrated that responsibility and have done it, but I think that it can also be done through an artist's vision, and I think that sometimes now it's sort of incumbent upon those who are choosing to take the road of just, I'm doing this myself, then they're, if they have a vision, it will come out, even if it's an individualistic, even if it's sort of realized individually. Like, who might be an example of that in modern day? But, well, you can't even say that Jacob Collier would be, because he could be that, but he chooses to play with a band.
Right.
Even though he can do all of these things himself. You know what I mean? So he understands the value of that. But like what, Brian Eno? I don't know. Or what I'm saying?
I do.
So
I do.
You could do it compositionally, but traditionally, the rhythm section, as you and I are speaking of it, yes. But as long as modern music still hangs on to a rhythm section, and then now shackles them to just be sort of living props of an imitation of machine tracks, then it's not going to come from the rhythm section anymore. If that becomes the only role that a rhythm section plays, then it won't happen. It could happen, but you got to let it happen.
I got one more voice to play for you, Mr. Colaiuta, and then we'll come back.
Oh, okay.
Well, I ended up, going into rehab, and
that's an easy one.
I had to, move out of New York, and I had been playing, under the influence for so long that I wasn't sure what was going to happen, but because of the, when I finally did get, go back and play, I have good friends in the business, and being able to go back to music straight, and still and love playing, and be in the same situations with people and not use anymore. It was good, man. It was great to have that. I could have lost it all, and I didn't. And so, being able to come back to music, looking back on it, helped save my life, you know.
All right, I heard you barking out there. Who is that?
That's my friend, the dear friend, the great one and only Dr. Steve Gadd.
And, you know, on my journey, I just have realized that music at the core, not, you know, the spiritual music, and I don't care if that's you and Larry playing To the Heavens with Joni Mitchell, or jug band music, or M1 or classical music. Spiritual music is healing music, and I tend to think of myself on the radio just inspiring people and making them think. Then I'm doing my job as a healer. And I kind of wanted to talk to you about a time in your life where you faced adversity and ultimately how you overcame it, how it made you a stronger person.
Well, you know, like Steve was saying, we all, I think many of us went through that phase of, you know, of substance abuse. And that's a hard thing because, you know, when you're down, I mean, you're on the ground. There's only one way you can look is up.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, you know, I just think that a lot of it is, like, it may start out being sort of like, oh, you just want to be part of the crowd, and then it grabs you in that place and puts its tentacles in that part of your brain, and yeah, it can take you down. And I think for many of us who are around, you know, we're grateful to be alive, man. Like Steve said, it could have just all gone south. And some of us, some friends of mine, you know, I love dearly and miss are just not here anymore. They didn't make it through the other side, and it's so sad. It just makes me see how fragile, and gives me a newfound appreciation for life. And I just I know how to get sober, but I have spiritual epiphany as well, because you know, and everybody has their own different version of it and how it happens with them. And so for me, you know, it happened in terms of a Christian epiphany, you know. So
can you talk about that?
Oh yeah, where I just, you know, I was really, really down and out, and I was in Switzerland, and I was doing this record, and I was really drunk and everything else, and these guys were with me who said, hey, well, can we pray for you? And, you know, I said, hey, look, you know, what is this, what are you going to suck me into something here?
Right.
And they just giggled and said no, and so I prayed with them. And it was like, you know, like, I guess what they would call the sinner's prayer, you know, or for whatever people would call it. Everybody probably has a different name, but where I just basically accepted Christ. And so the next day, so they just said, congratulations, that's all they said. And so I said, okay. You know, they were like, hey, bro.
Yeah, bro.
You know, it was like that. Yeah. So anyway, you know, it was an interesting thing because I left the next day to fly back, and they gave me a Bible, and of my own accord, like for no reason whatsoever, I started reading it, and the next thing you know, the plane flight was almost over, and I was reading it for like 8 hours.
Wow.
I couldn't stop.
Wow.
And where once it was like Greek to me, it suddenly was like it spoke to me in 3D Technicolor. So I felt like I had this spiritual epiphany. And interesting enough, like I was still drinking probably for about another year. Then I got sober. And I think that sort of set the sort of stage for me to have the strength to get sober, where I had to sort of, like, in other words, I think what happens is we talk about it on a spiritual level musically, right? Where we say we got to get out of our own way.
That's right.
Well, the same thing happens in having a spiritual epiphany.
Right.
You have to realize that there's a transcendent isness that's greater than yourself, of which you are, you know, people go, oh, well, you know, but God is within you. Within you. You have to understand what that means without being narcissistic about that. Because God, or this transcendent supernal isness, is both transcendent and immanent. So immanent being, you are of that. You are made in God's image. So that's the immanence of God, and he's everywhere and omnipotent and omnipresent. But there's the transcendent element too. So, the whole thing of surrendering is you have to let go and say, I had to basically let go. I mean, one day it was the worst hangover I ever had. And so, I just got up and I said, I give. I can't do this. And then I went to a meeting, and that was it, and I got sober because I didn't try to bargain with some person that I had an idea of that was supposed to be God, and that I was saying, if you just get me out of this mess, I won't do this again, I promise. With my fingers crossed behind my back and the Pinocchio nose starts growing.
Right.
Right. I didn't do the bargaining. I just gave up, said, I can't do this because the same mind that started the problem can't fix it. It just can't. So
I'm curious about because I've interviewed Demiola a couple times. He was talking about going into the studio, and he wanted Gad on the gig. This is during Elegant Gypsy, right when you were doing the Christopher, that kind of stuff. And Gad would be passed out in the studio, and they'd put up this very complex piece of music. He'd nod it off. They'd wake him up. They'd run it down. He'd knock it out in one take and then pass out again. He was I wonder how it affected did you understand
I was able to do that too.
Well, no. So my question is did you, because you just were so prophetic, so eloquent about the idea of this much larger thing than us. It's just much bigger. There's something much bigger. Did your concept of it seems to me like you already knew that on the bandstand, though. Even if you were drunk or whatever, you still, or did it change? Did that change too after you sobered up?
It came into focus. And I realized that it was always there. Yeah. Meaning that I knew about it. I just was given rein to sort of find it for myself, through grace. And grace, that's what grace does.
Grace.
Says, go ahead.
You nailed it.
You'll have your fun, but it's on you. You might get out of it, you might not. But I'll be right here to pick you up if you call on me. So that's what that's what happens. And so yeah. But it's interesting because I was able to do that too. But eventually it catches up because it just does. It's not good. Then you get to a point where you might go, I have to be using or drinking in order to play, and then you don't want to go there. You don't want to be in that place, because like Steve was saying, for me, when I first got sober, it was really fragile, and then I ended up probably being maybe a month sober, and then I had to go to Europe with some friends of mine. And interestingly enough, one of them was sober and in this program. And I basically said, look, I'm really fragile right now, and I need you to know this. And because of him, he helped me through it, and I was going to meetings and all that kind of stuff. And so I did that, and it helped me through a lot. So now it's kind of like I thank God every day. I mean, it's been 20 years now,
wow.
that I've been sober, and I'm very, very happy, and I don't take a second of it for granted. And, I think the reason why they say don't have any regrets is because it just puts you in this weird place of, you should just be grateful versus beating ourselves up. You know what I mean?
Totally. Totally.
I regret this. No,
because there's all this guilt and shame and judgment, and that's what. Yeah. That you're 100% right. It's just grateful. I mean, I've been praying during this interview because, I'm grateful to have the opportunity to catch a hang with you. I mean, just because,
Amen.
it's really and I think that, I mean, it's just really important because I think some people, my final question for you in set one is just, there's a lot of, and I think I've talked to a lot of cats, studio cats, Lee Sklar, and all these guys who, they, I mean, they say they have friends who are their age and they're very bitter and resentful. And it's surprising because they have all the gold records in the world and they have all the money they need.
Yeah.
And yet the phone has stopped ringing. And the reason that they're resentful that the phone is not ringing, they're not in demand, is because they felt that they were fully responsible for what came out of their voice or their apparatus that made the gold record or that made them famous, not realizing that they were merely a conduit for the music, that they were only partially responsible for playing what they played, and that their true nature was this ability to channel. And I wanted you to talk a little bit about, because I think I don't hear I wanted you to talk about how you learned to channel the music coming through you from the heavens.
Well, it was gradual, and I think it was part of a maturation process where, as I started, after I had a spiritual epiphany and, I started realizing a sober life in sobriety, and a continuation of the process, because the whole thing is process. And I just started, I think that I started realizing that the only way for me to let that happen was every time I would go into a session, I had to empty my mind and be like a blank book. Because if I went in there with these notions, then I would be too attached to something and not be able to sort of, hear any new information or hints, that were coming at me from that place. I'm not listening anymore, so you have to listen for that. It's like, when people talk about it just on a spiritual level, they'll say, listen to that still small voice inside of you. Well, that's what you're listening for. You're listening for that information to come at you. So I had to sort of empty my cup. And I began doing that, being cognizant of the fact that, okay, I have to do this now. Not begrudgingly either, but I knew it was something that I had to execute. A process. It was part of a process. Like, I have to empty my cup, wipe the blackboard clean. Okay. Now what are we here for?
Mm-hmm.
Let's let it tell us.
I love it, dude. You're telling me that really that happened after sobriety. Like, before that, maybe your ego was invested in your playing and you believed you were fully responsible.
Well, I don't know if I felt that I was fully responsible, but maybe. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't really thought that one through. I mean, I think that you could say that, or at least I felt that all of the information that I was relying on to produce what was going to come out was in me, and I just have to go through, sift through it, and it would kind of appear.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
So whether or not that was a product of ego, maybe. You feel self-sufficient. Yeah. And then if it doesn't come out, you feel like, oh, I failed. You know what I mean?
Well, don't get me wrong. I mean, listen, there's a big difference. I mean, because it's still, the music still feels really good. It's not like you're like dominating and wanking it. It's just
no. I get that. Yeah. Because I had the right sensibility.
Right. Exactly.
But I'm just talking about
totally
the wide, the bigger level stuff here that you and I are talking about now. And it's like, and there were things that happened to me along the way of that process, that's taken me a whole lifetime that things that were kind of ego shattering. Like, for example, and I talk about this a lot. There was a time I remember, I can't remember what the situation was, but I went into a session and I'm thinking to myself, I've got all these chops and I can read anything and, I can play anything else, and blah, blah, blah. And I go into a session and I can't think of what to play. And all of a sudden, like, the writer comes out who can barely play the drums and goes, well, maybe it sits down.
Right.
and just goes, maybe something like this, who played the exact right thing.
Right.
And I thought to myself, how good are you now?
Wow.
You know, so that was, things like that would happen.
Right.
You know, they're just going, no, you know, this is what the music's telling me. And I would have never heard it because I thought, oh, no, it's going to be, you know, I know what to do, you know, it's that kind of thing, you know. And then, you know, yeah. No, you don't.
Yeah, it's
you don't know what to do.
What is your advice? I just went to Ojai to see a great band that I love play at an outdoor show. They played 4 shows, and most of them were vaccinated and still got coronavirus. And I just wanted you to talk about because the only way you can make money in music today, and I don't need to tell you this, is by road dogging it. There's the intellectual property is not really there anymore. There's not really much of a studio scene the way it was when you even got to LA. So cats need to road dog and the merch tables, and that's how they get ahead. And there's a lot of amazing live music, but the uncertainty of all that, I know from my friends, artists are really, it's very disconcerting. And I just wanted you to offer some, not Pollyannish stuff, but just some wisdom to cats to keep looking towards the light, because the one industry, Vinny, that has stopped is live domestic touring music.
That's right.
I mean, the airlines have kept going. It's like there is no domestic touring circuit anymore. And like, I know you don't have a crystal ball, but when you think about your trajectory, what's your source of inspiration for these cats? Because I mean, if someone took the microphone away from me for 18 months, I'd be in a pretty despairing psychic state, I think.
Yeah, I think that's happening with a lot of us, and part of it has to do with, adrenal burnout, man, adrenal fatigue from 18 months of being in fight or flight.
Right.
That's going to do to people. No wonder why people are burnt out and confused and everything else. It's because of that.
You're right.
That's one thing. But in terms of the industry, yeah, it's like you have to go out and play gigs on the road, or you have to sell coffee mugs, right? And it's like now you're going to have these streams of income. I think that people are figuring it out by doing various things to try to monetize things. And I'd say that if you really want to get into this game, then you have no choice but to look at it from that angle and go, okay, well, like everybody's got a YouTube channel, and then maybe if I get enough subscribers, I'll have some AdSense,
right?
And I can do this and I can do that, and maybe funnel some people. But see, the problem is that you've got a lot of saturation now. Everybody, the whole gig now is like, hi, welcome to my channel. Here's how to do this.
Totally totally saturated with mediocrity. Totally.
I think it's great to learn. Everybody always wants to learn. But when it comes to the point where you're going, okay, I too now I'm going to be showing you the same licks, and I'm going to have an how-to channel as well. And I mean, people have argued with me about it, saying, yeah, but you're Vinny, you have a different take on it. You should do this. And I'm like, okay, fine. But I haven't. But really, I would just tell people, I mean, what I used to say a few years ago was, look, fight and, lobby, Congress and start petitions or get involved with movements like musicanswers.org to get the commerce back into music again. Because do you know that even in the Constitution mentions copyrights. It talks about intellectual property.
Wow.
In the Constitution itself. It's in there.
Wow.
And it's like, I think that, we're getting robbed, and I think the system is definitely been usurped. And this is a rabbit hole that I'd rather not get into right now.
Listen. Yeah, go ahead.
Like my music was always there, even through the Great Depression and all of that stuff. Now, ever since the channels have been sort of changed, through the internet, and oh no, we're just going to put everything up there and nobody gets paid. You know what I mean?
It's insane.
It's
Yeah, no, it's
ball game. And then COVID hits and nobody's going on the road. Oh boy. So I think that, if you just have to realize that if you're going to start just being a musician to try to, pay a mortgage and do all that kind of stuff, beware. And you had better be, be a marketing genius and know how to generate various streams of income, because it's a different, it's not like I play, you pay, like it used to be.
Oh my, that's exactly, dude. It's ridiculous now. It's like you pay to play now.
Yeah, it's you know what I mean, and it should be, because I still, like, if I go put gas in my car, I have to pay. If I go and get a hamburger, I have to pay. So okay, if I call a plumber, I have to pay. That's not like I'm going to follow him. Like, he's going to turn up and fix my sink and go, could you like me on my Facebook page and we'll call it a day? It doesn't happen.
I like your honesty. People are going to have to push themselves out of their comfort zone in order to sing for their supper now. It's just a different world. Yeah.
It is. I mean, and I would just tell anybody that. And it's when I see some of these ads coming from schools too, going like, our alumni are going to talk about the business. I'm like, what business? You should fix this and be lobbying Congress. Don't talk to me about when you're going to talk and go on some freaking clubhouse room and go blah, blah, blah for an hour, and we're in the same boat. I don't want to hear it. Make a change. Start something and focus for the same change. What I can't understand is how any administration in the government would even allow this to happen, because of all the tax revenue they're losing from it. Why would they want to do that? They must be getting it in some other way, Obviously they are, or they're getting it, I don't know.
Here's the bottom line. Can we do set 2 in a couple weeks? I got a lot more to go over with you.
Come on, yeah.
Now we'll let this breathe for a minute. This was a ball, man. But you know what it is? My whole my whole thing is like providing a platform for new information. I have produced 4 books from these types of interviews, and most importantly, to hear from you guys. Like I said, it's about promotion, because I hopefully believe that it's cyclical, and that if we don't burn the entire house down, that a lot of younger seekers will come along at a certain point, well after we've left this planet, and use this information to cultivate a new vocabulary and a new way of doing things. So what, right? That's what Miles said. Yeah. So what, right? Just do it.
Right.
So, I mean, anyway, man, bless you, Vinnie. I'll get you a copy of this later, and then in a couple weeks we can do set 2.
Amen, man.
Amen, dude. Much love to Larry. Dude, I just want to say that the stuff you did with Joni Mitchell live from I don't know. It's like that has saved me on some of the darkest times, man. I think the best thing about musicians is that they don't even realize the cumulative results of their healing power. It's not just in the wallet. It's like there are people that,
Amen.
Yeah, man, it's the truth, man. So I'm glad I fired you up, and thanks for the time, man.
Oh, man. Likewise, Jake. Thank you so much, man. Thank you for the time, and hit me up anytime.
I will, man. Talk to you soon, all right? Much love.
Much love, man. Bless you, brother.
Bless you, too. Be safe. Be cool.
You too. Ciao, ciao.
Ciao, man. Big thanks to spirit brother Larry Klein hooking me up with Vinnie Colaiuta. Be thankful for what you got. This is the Jake Feinberg Show. We'll see you later.
sing.